thought it was the one at the back. I think we're ready to start again. So I didn't know that my cheese preferences were going to be the thing that's going to be driving our debates today, but there you go. So in fact, I think what's going to happen is that the rest of the afternoon is actually going to follow very much squarely from the panel that we just had. So we're going to be talking about healthy choices, we're going to be talking about nutrition, but then we're also going to throw in things like prices in the mix and what it means when food's very expensive and how we can make those healthy choices. So we'll have a panel on that, but before that, we have our sponsor segment with Simon Branch, who's the Senior Director for Research Development and Scientific Affairs at Herbalife Nutrition, and he's going to be interviewed by Jean-Paul Johnson, who's the founder at Now More.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hi,
Good afternoon.
Simon. So we've just heard an exciting panel all around food labeling. We heard some of the challenges with food labels when it comes to providing information to consumers, dietary, nutritional information. But beyond the food label, what other ways are there to empower consumers to make healthier diet choices?
Thanks very much. So I think, we heard a little bit about the complexity of labels, and of course labeling is absolutely critical to providing information for consumers to help them make healthy choices. I think in the brief introduction there, we heard something else that's very important, and that's the importance of affordability. So good nutrition must be available at a number of price points, because obviously if you can't afford something, you don't actually have a choice, do you? We didn't really touch on it at all, but we heard a little bit this morning about sustainability, environment. Increasingly, consumers are wanting to make the right choice for our planet. And at the moment, that's a very complex and difficult area for consumers to navigate their way through. So I think we need to provide the education, the tools. When I say we, I mean the whole of kind of the food supply chain with regulators, policymakers, to help the consumer navigate their way through that very complex area. Coming back to nutrition itself, I mean, there are a lot of different ways of presenting nutrition information. We like the concept of nutrient density, which provides information about the nutrition that you get for a calorie or a serving. So a high nutrient density food has more protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, versus a lower nutrient density product where you might find more sugars and saturated fats. But there is no bad food. It's about having the right balance of foods to achieve good nutrition.
So it's one thing to inform and to try and educate consumers. It's another thing to actually get food to the plates of consumers. And we hear increasing pressure on the agri-food sector and also in the food supply chain. At Herbalife Nutrition, are you also facing issues in terms of food supply? Can you maybe tell us what some of the challenges are and how you're addressing them?
Absolutely, and that was covered a little bit this morning. I mean, I think there are three broad areas. We didn't really touch on it much, but it's still with us. Of course, it's the COVID pandemic. And we're still seeing the aftershocks of that. In some countries now, the rates of infection are going up. So it hasn't gone away. We've got it under control. But it only takes one person to be off sick, who's the person that's at the port releasing an import, and you have a short-term issue. Of course, the war in the Ukraine is having a significant impact on many food producers. We talked a little bit about some of those shortages of seed oils like sunflower oil, of cereals like wheat. Obviously, impacts on energy costs as well. And if you take things like sunflower oil and wheat, they're the starting commodities for many ingredients as well. So the way that those ingredients are converted into, those starting materials are converted into ingredients also impacts us. And overarching everything is the continuing climate emergency. So, you know, turn on the television, we see flooding in Pakistan. Closer to home, we're well aware of the drought that we've experienced in Western Europe this year. At one end of the, if you like, of the nutritional spectrum, when there are shortages of ingredients, shortages of food, malnutrition, hunger, starvation, and yet at the other end of the nutritional scale, we still see challenges around obesity. So there's some people have nowhere near enough, and there are others that really have too much. These things are not mutually exclusive. They contribute to the overall kind of healthcare crisis that we face. And again, you know, a large part of this is what we need to do in industry, but also, of course, working with education to help signpost people to the right choices to make.
So in terms of combating obesity and the broader impact on healthcare of foods, you have a history at Herbalife Nutrition of working with plant-based diets. As a scientist and working at Herbalife, can you give us some of the top benefits, you would say, of consuming plant-based diets, both from a healthy lifestyle perspective, but also maybe in terms of environmental impact as well?
Yeah, I think good health and sustainability can go hand in hand. You're absolutely right. For more than 40 years, plant and plant protein has been at the heart of the products that we produce. Approximately 85% of all the protein that we use is from plant sources. Somebody mentioned this morning about trying to diversify the sources. We use primarily soy, but increasingly pea, quinoa, flaxseed proteins. And just take one of those, soy. It's a good nutritional choice. Soy is a complete protein. By that I mean it contains all of the 9 essential amino acids that we need in our diet that our body can't synthesize. But also soy is very good for the environment. Soy emits less carbon, it uses less water, and it yields more protein per acre than animal proteins like beef, like eggs, like milk. So again, it doesn't need to be a lot of change, just changing perhaps a few of the meals that we eat in the course of a week to a plant-based diet or plant-based foodstuffs in that meal will be a positive impact for our planet.
Because we're hearing more and more about plant-based proteins, particularly, and I wonder, is this sort of a short-term trend, or do you see this as a deeper signal that, you know, society, consumers are getting more and more conscious about, you know, what they're eating, the choices they're making? How do you see that moving forward?
That's a really good question, and it's always difficult to know if what you're seeing is just a sort of short-term fad, or it's something that is a longer-term mega trend. Perhaps starting with vegetarianism itself, I think we can be very confident that is something that there's a significant proportion of consumers now embrace as part of their lifestyle. You go into the retailers, you go into the supermarkets, and you'll see brands that are based primarily around plant-based materials. So I think vegetarian's been adopted. More recently, obviously, we see a move towards veganism. And I think that's driven by consumers aware that that's a healthy choice, but also, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I think wanting to try and do something that's better for our planet. So it might be the jury is still out a little bit on veganism, but I think, you know, it's obvious there's a significant proportion of the population want those kinds of products. What do we need to do about it? What do we need to do in the broader terms? I mean, again, the challenge will be to ensure that there's adequate supply of plant protein if more and more people are going to move into that as part of their lifestyle. So I would propose that we probably need a European plant protein strategy that's going to give farmers a consistent basis on which to switch towards the sort of crops that we might be growing. Fundamentally, there's R&D requirements. If we're going to move and diversify the kinds of crops that we're growing, we obviously need to be sure that when we plant those, that we're going to get the yields that we want, and that it's something that the farmers can be very, very, very confident about. And again, behind all of that, going out to schools again, supporting sort of good nutrition, ensuring that an awareness of good nutrition starts very early in life.
Okay, and so Simon, in the last minute or so that we have, as the senior director for R&D and scientific affairs at Herbalife Nutrition, may I ask you, what keeps you up at night? And I'm not necessarily talking about your worst nightmare, okay? But what keeps you up at night?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's anything that really keeps me up at night, but there's a lot of things that keep me very busy in the day. Michael this morning mentioned the importance of innovation, and I honestly don't think there's been a more important time for us as an industry to be innovating. We face many challenges, and the beauty of working in R&D is that we cope with whatever challenge that's thrown at us. Ultimately, there's an issue, there's an opportunity, and it's the skills of the R&D team that need to come to terms with that. So the sort of things that we're facing at the moment, we talked about it in terms of the issues. We need to, at a very basic level, reformulate many of our products. We need to be looking at alternative ingredients. We can't rely short-term on sunflower, so we're needing to move to alternatives there. We have to recognise that many consumers at the moment have a reducing disposable income. So we constantly work with our sourcing teams and through supply chain to look at alternative ingredients that will continue to make our products very affordable for the population that's buying into them. And then I also think that as scientists, it's absolutely essential that we provide really good, sound information based on solid science, so that when a consumer picks up a product, and as we're just hearing, looks at the label and makes a decision based on the information that's on that label, they can trust the numbers that they're seeing there and know that when they're making that choice, they're making the right one.
Perfect. Well, I do hope you get some sleep at night and a good rest from the day's work. So thanks a lot, Simon, for having shared your insights, and to you, enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're back for our next panel, which is called Putting a Price on Health. As I said, I think we've had some very interesting discussions about healthy lifestyle decisions, healthy food, and I think I want to make things, well, not me necessarily, I think things have just gotten a bit more complicated because we've also thrown price into the mix. We've got high food prices, and I think that kind of puts a lot of pressure on consumers and policymakers to try to figure out, okay, within this kind of environment, how can we make people make better decisions? So for this panel, we have Laurence Tougan in person, who is the coordinator of the Federal Food and Health Plan for the Federal Public Service of Public Health, Food Chain Safety and Environment in Belgium. And joining us online, we have Monique Goyens, the Director General for BEUC, the European Consumer Organization. And we have Lena Whitaker, who's the Director for Competitiveness at Eurocommerce. So welcome, everybody. I guess I look in there. Hi. So I think we've talked a lot about some of the pressures that have affected food prices so far. So I think we have an idea of why food is expensive today when it comes to high fertilizer prices, when it comes to the war in Ukraine. But I'll first ask Laurence, what has Belgium done in response?
Okay, so hi everyone. I can see that the subject is less interesting than the previous one. All the audience leave almost. So I hope we will do it in an interactive manner. So hi, both. That's pity that you are not with us today. So the Belgian federal state is facing also this problem of price issues, but of course it's not so depending of a national level. We are living in an EU market, as you know, so we are trying to have some measure to help people to afford the food. But the policy of price is not dedicated to the government, in fact. This is a big task, and we have a representative from Eurocommerce, so she can maybe figure out more than me the price policy and retail policy, because we are depending a lot on retail, as you may know. But of course, we have the fiscal measure that we can act as a government. But it is also a very heavy task especially within a context with crisis. Because if we are speaking about fiscal measure or VAT measure, it means that someone has to pay for it. In one end, if let's say we put the VAT on fruit and veg at 0 instead of 6%, the government will earn less money in one end. And also, second, we are not sure that the price will go down, because the price elasticity. It's not depending only on VAT, it's many factors. The health, the meteo condition, the offer and demand. So let's say the fiscal issue, it's a very hot topic, not only in Belgium, in Netherlands, in France, but we have no insurance that it will affect the people, the consumers, and especially the most vulnerable of them. So we are reflecting on this. And of course, we want the VAT on fruit and veg at 0, like the Netherlands, but we want to be sure that it will affect for real the price on the shelf, which is not certain. We can, of course, argue that if we decide this measure, the food producer can reasonably assume that they have to change the price. Otherwise, it's not very commercial for them to not make something on the price for the food consumer, for the consumer. So we hope that it will affect for real the price, but we have no insurance on that, especially because we have an internal market also.
Right.
And Belgium is a small state also. Thank you.
Right. Well, so I'll just ping the question to you, Lena. What have retailers done? How have grocery stores, I mean, is that in their concern to make sure that prices are low, that people can still afford food?
Well, thank you. For those that don't know Eurocommerce, we are representing the retail and wholesale sector. So, of course, our members are taking their steps as much as possible to help meet the costs and aware of the cost of living crisis that is affecting many people, and as prices are rising. I think If I may also just quickly react to what we just heard from the person that has managed to come to the venue live, obviously, and I'm sorry I'm not with you, is to also point out that actually it is true on whether the prices will get affected, because retailers are obviously operating with margins that are very low. These are usually in food 1 to 3%. And at the moment, with the squeeze that is coming from energy, rising energy prices, and also the pressures that are being put on them by suppliers as well, where they can see as well there are some perhaps unjustified costs that are rising, the levels that are being asked of them to pay, that this actually is making it more difficult for them to keep their prices, as you say, at the price that could make consumers be able to appreciate and be able to continue when they themselves are facing the rises in energy bills. So I think it is on retailers' shoulders, and what they have done to try to stomach a little bit of this pressure that's coming from the rising energy prices, etc., that as I mentioned, is to try to absorb some of those costs as much as possible. So to try and avoid passing these on to consumers, but there's only a certain limited time that this can really take place for it. And I think, as I think everyone's looking towards the winter and knowing that fridges can't be switched off, particularly if you think about the cold chain, this length of time where these the consumers can be almost protected as much as possible is coming to an end.
Monique, I'll ask you then. Have you been convinced, as representing the consumers, by what the retailers and by what governments in Europe are doing to ensure that food prices at least remain affordable in the short term?
Yes, good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me there. First, a message to Laurence. I would have loved to be with you on stage. I was supposed to be with you on stage, but my train was delayed by 100 minutes. So I decided not to take that one and to come online to be sure to be there. Second thing, I need to say that, I really need to say that, a little bit of fact checking on the Nutri-Score session the last session. We have members in Italy and in Spain, and they fully support Nutri-Score. So the unanimity image that has been given by the people from Italy, by the minister, is not fact-checked by our members. So just that I wanted to put that straight. Now coming back to your question, I really believe it's important to look at the long term because we have now a crisis that should be addressed and is not yet addressed by social policies for the lower income segments of the population. And also, I still believe that a reduced VAT rate combined with competition at the retail level can help people to have less pricey access to food. However, what is very important is to see that we need price signals that are more in favor of healthy diets, because for the moment what we see, and that's the long-term challenge, we need to go towards more healthy diets, more sustainable diets. And what we see for the moment is that poor diets, meaning high calorie intensity, high level of salt, of sugar, of fat, they are in fact less expensive because the cost on society and on yourself, because it's your health, it's your life that is at stake. And then it's the public health sector that is under pressure when you are getting ill and when you are getting obese. Those are not reflected in the price. And this is something that should be addressed with different ways of pricing. And just to give you one example, I don't want to speak too long for my first round. One of the things that Europe could do is to really repurpose farm subsidies. For the moment, there is too much subsidies being granted to food that we should eat less of, meat or dairy, and not enough to subsidies for those farmers that in fact produce fruit and vegetables. If you could overturn this type of subsidiation, you would make healthier diets much more affordable. It's the same for campaigns. You know, people live in a food environment. And if you want them to make sustainable and healthy choices, you need to make that easy. And for the moment, too much public funding is being granted at national and at European level to promoting food that in fact you should not eat so much of, like, for example, alcoholic beverages or meat. And that's something that could be overturned And by then promoting the right thing, you make it also more affordable for people.
So, I mean, that kind of it's an excellent segue into what I want to get into, which is what we were discussing before in terms of health. I would assume that when food in general is more expensive, healthy food is also included in that. And just to sort of get into that a little bit, Laurence, can you tell me when we talk about healthy food, is it true to say that, as Monique suggested, that healthier food tends to be more expensive or doesn't tend to be as subsidized or supported as food that is not as healthy?
I think first that there is also a myth on that the fact that healthy food is always expensive. This is not true. I think it is true in a way, but it is also untrue in a way, because we need more health literacy about what is nutritious, in fact. And not a lot of people knows what is nourishing them. For instance, a plant-based diet, it's not so expensive. If you avoid meat, you can totally live with that. And but you need to know at least how to do it, because it supposes knowledge. It's not so evident to have good association between cereals and legumes, for instance, or with veg. But you can fully cover your needs with a very plant-based diet, and also not so expensive diet. If you look at local and seasonal products, and if you look at other kind of way to provide those foods. For instance, there is many other options than retailer, but people doesn't know how to reach the farmers, in fact. This is also a matter of knowledge. And in Belgium, there is several ways of other kind of production, let's say local and coming direct from the farmers, which is not expensive, in fact. You can have for 10 euro your vegetable for the week. So which is not a lot, and which is nourishing you. But the fact is that we didn't talk about that, but food marketing is also very important in that regard, because we convince people that they need foods which they don't need for true, but they are convinced that they need it. If you look at retail, the half of the supermarket are meaningless, no need. Not our biological needs, not depending on that kind of food. I mean, mainly the ultra-processed food. So if you think of it, and if we educate more the consumer, we can, of course, reach them very more healthier way of eating, and also not so expensive way of eating. And this maybe, I don't know, Saim, you are come from India? Pakistan, but I mean in India, they have from ages the culture of plant-based diet, and they can nourish a family with €1, in fact. But nobody knows that. We are convincing people that they need to have a basket full of shit, in fact. But this is the reality. And this is also an aspect that as government, we have to give as education, how you can nourish you for not so expensive, especially in a crisis time.
And are you doing that? Are you educating people in terms of what?
We have many ways.
To avoid the basket of shit that they can get.
As the previous MEPs was saying, we are adults. We know what is good for us. This is not true.
No?
First, health literacy, it's not a basic level for everyone. The problem is that we have a problem with very social, economical deprived people. They are not enough well educated to know what is nourishing them, what is the basic need on nutrient, vitamins. Many people doesn't even know that they need iodine, for instance, which is very important, especially for pregnancy. Vitamin D, we have seen all these questions during the pandemics, that we know that we are eating bad. So first of all, we need to educate. It takes time. It takes at least one generation. It's not a question of months. It's a question of 10, 20 years. First of all, we have to begin with the young child. Even before, during pregnancy and before pregnancy, in fact, because if you don't have the needs that for the baby and for the mom, you can have some nutrient deficiencies. And it goes like that for every level of stage in the life. So first of all, we need a local level to work with the people in need, because they need explanation, direct, how to make your basket, in fact. Go to a store, what I need, what I have to choose, what I have to pick. No, please let the ultra-processed food in the shelf and try to find how to use your budget in an intelligent manner, in a very nice manner. But of course, there is another problem. We have to educate people at the flavor, because they have completely, we live in a sort of schizophrenic world. We are convinced that direct pleasure, like I eat a Snickers, or let's say another brand, I don't know, chocolates from the manufacturer, it's direct pleasure. This is very funny. If you need to educate people with fruit and veg history or cereal and legumes, it takes time. But it is also flavoring. So it's a big issue. We need the local level, the middle level, and the top level to subsidize it in a good way. Also, we are thinking about offering sort of subsidies for, first of all, the people in need for fruit and veg, local and seasonal, and they can buy only this with this subsidy.
So like a more specific Sodexo card, essentially?
Exactly.
Okay.
This is the idea. And we want to subsidize this. And of course, we were speaking about VAT at 0 for fruit and veg, but we want to make a rising for the other kind of product from the top of the pyramid.
So a form of taxation, essentially.
With a taxation level, maybe a rising from 6 to 21%.
Right.
Like for the very expensive food, like caviar and so on.
Right.
We want to, because we need money, of course, if we have
Not
to be
Russian,
in balance.
I'm assuming.
And also we want to, but it's difficult, and this is very unpopular measure, especially for consumer and food industry, of course.
Right.
So not easy task.
So so Laurence touched on supermarkets, and they're pretty much at the front line of this debate. Lena, I just like your response in terms of the things that are stacked, the things that are good for us, the things that are not, and what supermarkets can do to make sure that they're stacked with things that are good for us.
Well, I think a lot has already been said that I could comment on, but I think one thing that I will pick up, the consumer education, it's good to hear that there's efforts there. I now look at the way my 8-year-old son is and his attitude towards food and what he thinks is healthy, and it shows that it's coming through. He comes back from school and he tells me that differences are there. And certainly supermarkets are working together with consumers and with governments to try and push forward more healthier choices. And I think you can probably already think of some schemes that are familiar to you from your own local supermarket where this is coming from. So I think education is there. It's not going to be something that can be done alone. And I think there are many, many initiatives that retailers are participating in to push this forward. Also, there is the fact that what is in the supermarket at the end of the day, they're a business. If people aren't buying the basket that may not be the ideal basket in a healthy world, it's also because it's driven by what consumers are interested in. So I think there's also another point that perhaps is also worth bringing out a little more now. Eurocommerce, together with McKinsey, has really partnered together to look at the state of grocery retail. And I think where our report in just the earlier part of this year really identified actually there's an increasing polarization of consumers. And I think part of it has been mentioned is that the price of food means there are different opportunities for different groups. And this report was published in about April. So at that point, yes, there was some effects of inflation and energy and the war in Ukraine, but that hadn't really already taken over as much as probably what the impression would be now. And I think what was seen in this report as well is that it's making consumers change their behaviors, and this is what supermarkets have to react to. So already 4% more consumers were looking to find what they could buy that was in the private label products instead of branded ones. And there were more, about 19% more German consumers were looking to shop at a discounter. So I think it's probably also worth putting into this debate as well, the fact that there is now a growing polarization of consumers, and supermarkets are there to try to cover the full range. And I think this is probably one of those points that also needs to just be borne in mind, that there is a shift in what consumers are buying. And it is, and I think retailers are reporting a reduction in purchases of fresh meat, fish and fruit and vegetables, and more purchases of pasta, rice and canned products. So I think this trend, as inflation and energy increase, like the pressures of them increase, I think we will see more than this. And we also don't know quite where the future would go to. I think I recently heard about a debate where people were saying that maybe there could be a point where the price of apple juice gets so high that people switch to drinking water, and this may inadvertently be a healthier consequences of the price rises, but this all remains to be seen.
But in this debate, supermarkets have a lot of agenda setting power. I mean, if supermarkets decide, okay, we want more of this or less of that, shouldn't there be more of an impetus at this point to, I don't know, have fewer Haribo packets or more apples or something like that? It seems that they're very much in the position where they can dictate the kind of choices that consumers get to make. And those are the sort of things that obviously supermarkets do a lot of research on in terms of where to place what. And, you have the bubble gum when you're taking out the counter and stuff like that. I mean, if you're using all those behavioral science technologies, surely that those can be used to promote the kind of behavior that can make sure that, people are healthy as opposed to just with another bag of Doritos.
Well, I would say that this is actually being harnessed already. I think certainly within the power of retailers, as you say, is to make something by positioning on the shelf, by putting it in a different position than it can drive, together with the initiatives that are out there, that are various schemes that are encouraging healthier eating. So, I mean, in terms of what can be put on the shelf as well, I mean, it also, the control of retailers is perhaps more for those that are producing their own brands, and they can, by investing, also consider what the nutrition would be in these products, and also then positioning them as well. But also they're also making sure that the brands are also producing products that they can make sure that they place in the right place, as long as they also are meeting these ideals as well. So there is a lot that supermarkets can do. And I think, again, as I said, there's many initiatives where they are already doing this. And I think if you think about the new drive for sustainability, this will be another part of where this sort of ability to make something more visible will also play a good role.
Monique, would you agree?
In fact, I was going to say that supermarkets are really part of the solution, and I was going to give the example of the checkout counter where you really can put apples instead of chocolates. So yes, I think, and it has been taken on board by several supermarkets, but not by the whole sector. So we were even thinking of, if they don't do it voluntarily, let's regulate that the checkout counters should only, should not display the more unhealthy food. So that's certainly something that can be, we would prefer voluntary, but if it doesn't work, well, then we need to go to the next level. But I would like to really insist and to confirm what Laurence also mentioned. I think it's really possible to have not so costly healthy diets. Lina just spoke about tap water or drink water, but you can in fact replace bottled water by tap water. Of course, that's maybe not what supermarkets would like you to do, but still, it's much less expensive. And overall, everywhere in Europe, it's safe to drink tap water. You can really work, and that's a little bit of changing your habits and your organization. You can work on food waste. Food waste is 20%, and a lot of the waste takes place in your fridge or in your cupboard, but can also be linked to the packaging that is being organized, where supermarkets and producers have a responsibility in in their promotional campaigns where you in fact are being encouraged to buy more than what you really need, and then it ends up as waste. What I would like to give the example that has been really to give you just a very concrete example of healthy food that is not it's much more sustainable and also cheaper. Our Belgian member Testacha has made a test between chili con carne and chili sin carne, where the beef has been replaced by white beans. And in fact, it not only means 10 times less CO2 emissions, but also 4 grams more fiber and cost 3.4 times less than the version with meat. So you can really, but it needs education, it needs taste education, flavor education, but it is very important to get there. I would like to stress one thing. If you really want to have people on board, and you need a critical mass of people, also those who are reluctant to change their eating habits, you need them on board to go into this transition that our food system needs in order to be sustainable. Don't blame anybody. It's very important not to be patronizing, because then you will have an effect of people will turn their back on you and on the policy. It's very important, in fact, to go it the other way, to encourage people and to make it fun. And you can have gaming, you can have apps, be they promoted by producers, by supermarkets, by consumer organizations, by governments, in order to make the healthy diet the most fun one to roll out. And that's something that is really important. Take the people with you on the journey towards more sustainable diets.
When I was young, I think there were a lot of teachers and my parents that tried to make healthy food fun, and I just never got into it for some reason. I think I still stuck to the chocolate, so I don't know how hard or easy that might be, even as taking me as an example. But I did want to bring it back to you, Laurence. You've mentioned education, and of course that's something that you don't fix a crisis with. That's something that takes a generation. And you talked about lowering VAT, but at the same time, it seems like there is this option that Monique also kind of alluded to, where you tax junk food, where you tax soda cans. Is that something that you're considering? And that's the kind of thing that you could do in the immediate short term to ensure the kind of outcomes. And if you're talking about getting extra money, then that's the kind of money that could subsidize the stuff you do want people to eat. Is that something that you're seriously considering?
Not only considering, but doing, but not at. Let's say it's not enough rate. We do it, but it's not influencing the health habit. In Belgium, we have sort of axes. In France, they have also a system on soft drinks, and it works better than us because they allow a part of the budget raised by this tax to the health promotion, which is not the case in Belgium. It goes directly to the public treasure, right, and it doesn't go to the health prevention, which is a problem. It is not enough, of course, to be enough consistent and ambitious as a federal state, but it's still a big amount, but it's not enough to influencing a change of consumption. There is many research on it, and we have to upper the price at least about 20% more, right, so, which means on a can a lot. And it is not, again, popular measure, especially in a crisis context. And none of the ministers at the moment in Europe will do that. That's the problem. That's an issue. Because, of course, in one end, we want to change the behavior, but since you make a can of Coke or cola, let's say, it's about 70 euro cent for the moment, and you say tomorrow it's €2. Like for cigarettes. Cigarettes, it's not food, and food is not cigarettes. So it's not the same field of policy. We have to be very careful with the fiscal measure, and of course it can work. We have some good example in California with soft drinks, but they withdraw the measure in between. So there is not a lot of...
Why did they do that?
They do that on soft drinks, and they put a very high tax on soft drinks to promote tap water. but it was 10 years ago, I think. And in Chile, they have done a lot because, in fact, Chile is the top worldwide country with obesity and overweight, front Mexico and US. Yeah. So they have putting fiscal measure on soft drinks and many other kind of products rich in sugar. And it looks like it works, but it's not about 20%, it's less than that. Mm-hmm. So we can always argue on that. We have to move on, that's true, but it's not up to me to decide that. And it is not only about up to the health minister, it's with economy, fiscality and so on. It is a big issue, and it is also a European debate we have to discuss with DG Enterprise. It's not limited at a national level, of course.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that it's a question of political will, right? If
political
you're trying to invite more ministers to do it, if you're telling them that, okay, a lot of consumers are going to be very pissed off at you because their drinks are now more expensive.
But I think, first of all, fiscal measure it's not the magic bullet. It's like FOPNL, front of pack labeling, nutritional front of pack labeling. It helps, but it is not the solution. It's a matrix. I mean, it's many measures combined all together that makes a change. So we can believe that fiscal measure can change things, but do you want a world with a can of soft drink at €2? It's from day to day. We need to evaluate on that field. We need to educate parallelly, because otherwise, if you take that measure, it will be, first of all, unpopular, and maybe it is the wrong way, I think. We need to educate and move step-by-step approach, I think. We can have small step of rising of the food price, but it's still a big debate. Look how it's complicated to implement a FOPNL. Could you figure out how it is complicated to have those fiscal measures or even a limitation on food marketing? It's a very big challenge.
Yeah. So I think we're over time, so we'll try to call it here. And in fact, we're so over time that the networking break that was scheduled in is almost over at this point. So we'll dive into the next segment of the event. So thank you.
Thank you to you.
Thank you, Monique. Thank you, Lina. And thank you, Laurence.
Thank you, Saïd. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have the next panel, which is going to be by Bartosz.